Welcome back to Expert Instruction, the Teach by Design podcast, where we dive deeper into the research surrounding student behavior by talking with the people who are actually implementing these practices, where they work, and with the students they support. I'm Megan Cave. So are you all back to school? We're headed in that direction out here in Oregon. Things will start back up for us after Labor Day here. And I have to say, I think I'm equally as excited as I am nervous. A lot of students out here haven't been physically inside a classroom in a minute. So this transition between summer and being in a classroom, it feels kind of weird, but it's also a really great time, I think, to figure out how we can support each other differently now and how we can start to create the types of spaces that are welcoming, inspiring, and of course, full of care. Today, we're going to get into what it means to be radically welcoming, a concept that came to me from Dr. Christopher Emdin and his conversation during the Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts Activate series that was centered around the same topic. If you haven't checked it out, head over to the Lincoln Center's website when you have about an hour and just listen to the conversation that he has with these educators. It's worth your time, I promise. In this episode, we'll be joined by Saki Malose. She's a research assistant at the University of Oregon and such a wonderful colleague. She brings with her a rich educational experience to the table. She's taught in and worked in schools in India, Peru, Estonia, Finland, Kenya, and of course, right here in the United States. She's more than a scholar and a teacher. She's passionate about being creative, and she loves to dance and cook and paint. And all of these things she brings with her to create welcoming spaces everywhere she goes. We'll talk to her today about all of that and what a radically welcoming classroom looks like to her. Oh, and today it's her birthday. So I hope you'll all join me in wishing Saki a happy birthday. Now let's get into this conversation. Welcome, Saki. Thanks so much for joining us and being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be on this podcast today, speaking with you.
Yeah, it's your first one, right? It's your first podcast.
Yes, my first one. First ones are always very special. They give you this at the same time. They give you so much more joy and happiness.
Yeah. Well, hopefully this is the first of like many to come, you know. So today we're focused on the idea of being radically welcoming, which is a new concept for me. I mean, obviously being a welcoming person is something that I can understand that. I know what it means to welcome people, but this concept of being radically welcoming, that we're doing more to make other people feel comfortable in the spaces that we create, the spaces that we're sort of in charge of. And it came to me, this concept came to me from Dr. Christopher Emdin. I follow him on a couple of different social media platforms. And he, he was sharing what it means to him. And then you and I, we both watched the conversation that he moderated, right? With
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Great. Lovely.
I always get so much out of what he has to share. It's really basic information, but the way that he talks about it, it feels fresh and new.
Yes.
So anyway, so he was moderating this conversation between 5 educators from around the US and what it means to them to be radically welcoming. And it was held in this space that he had created specifically to be welcoming for students, which I also thought was great. So anyone who's listening should totally check it out. It's over on the Lincoln Center's website. We'll put a link in the article with the podcast. So it got me thinking about what does being radically welcoming mean to you?
I think about the situation where I'm in a totally alien environment where I have not been before. So before stepping in the environment, obviously, like I'm nervous. I'm thinking about how it will be. I don't know how to navigate. I don't know people there. Things might be new to me. So all this I'm thinking before stepping into that alien environment. And many times it happened with me that as I stepped into the environment, I saw little genuine gestures by the people there, which really made me feel very comfortable and welcomed. I saw that they took that extra step just to make me feel comfortable and welcomed. And I really appreciated that. And that really means being radically welcome to me.
Yeah.
And like simple things like food, which was known to me, music, which was known to me, a simple greeting, which I was familiar with, but the people there were not. But they did it just so that I feel comfortable and I feel welcome. And all these little gestures, which were maybe not their comfort zone, but they stepped out of their comfort zone, just a little small step, and took that just to make me feel comfortable, welcomed, and kind of a part of the community in a totally new alien environment. For me, that means being radically welcomed. And as an educator, as a teacher trainer, I felt gratitude for people who did like genuine gestures for me, and I tried to replicate such little gestures in my classroom, in the trainings that I conducted. So I tried to give back those little tiny gestures of gratitude.
Yeah. For me, I totally agree with what you're saying, because the places where I felt the most welcome, I think, have been in people's homes. It seems like, to me, someone's home is it's so personal, obviously. It's such a personal spot. And to invite someone inside to see all of your things and how you live and what you do in your home, all of that feels really special. And so to me, I don't know. I think when I try and think of any space that I'm trying to create, whether it's at work or with friends or just anywhere, I think I'm trying in some ways to replicate what I would do in my home to make other people feel comfortable. So for me, I think that's kind of what it is like being open myself and being personal myself. Just the way that I would, that the situation would be when I invited someone into my home. Does that make sense? Like,
yes.
when you come into my home, everything is personal. And so any space that I create, I want to make it personal. And so that if I'm open, I feel like other people will feel like it's comfortable, that they could be open. And I think that's like the goal that I have for so much of what I do. I don't know about you, but like for so much of what I do, I feel like not only do I want to be someone who's honest, but I really want to create the space where other people can be open and honest and be just who they are, and feel comfortable with who they are. So whatever that takes to create that space, that's what it means for me to be radically welcome. You mentioned some things that people have done, the little things that they did that really made all the difference, because it doesn't have to be some grand gesture. It's some small things. So like, what's a situation where you walked in thinking that you weren't too sure how things were going to go, and then it just changed for you? And what was that thing that someone did that made you feel so welcome?
So let me tell you again a very personal example, not from work, but like, as you said, like personal life. So I'm from India, and I'm in the United States for last 3 years now. And I remember my very first doctor's appointment in the United States. Obviously, doctor's appointments are not something that you look forward to.
I don't. No.
And plus, imagine having that feeling in a totally new environment.
Right. Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, so I don't know how hospitals are in the United States. I don't know how doctors are, how nurses are. So I scheduled an appointment, and feeling all this, thinking about all this, I went into the doctor's office, and the doctor was so kind. He kind of, beforehand, he saw my records and he knew that I'm an Indian. Um, and as I was sitting in his office, a little bit nervous, thinking about all these things, as he walked into the office, he said namaste and he folded his hands the Indian way.
Oh,
Yeah, and he said namaste and with a smile.
yeah.
And that instantly made me feel so comfortable, so welcome.
Mm.
And just like it just helped make that connection. So I felt very welcomed, and I calmed down, and we started talking, and it was, although I was not expecting a very pleasant experience, but I would say it was a pleasant experience.
Yeah, as far as doctor visits go, it was probably as nice as it could be. That's great. That's great that he recognized that and kind of went out on a limb to try that. I wonder what it took for him to get to that spot, to be like, this is what I'm going to do when I walk into the office, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, I think it's cool. I went, a friend of mine, she invited me to go rock climbing. We had both had babies right around the same time. And we were kind of in a place where we were ready to just bust out and like go do something else than, taking care of babies. And so, so she invited me to go rock climbing with her, which is something I've never done ever. And I was sure I'll let me out of the house. And so, so she invited me to go, and we went to this gym where they have like bouldering and like all this stuff that you can do. And I didn't know anything about it. And so I was uncomfortable for several reasons, but one was walking into a place like that where it appears as though everyone in there kind of knows how everything goes. And I didn't know anything. Like, I don't know, what am I supposed to do? I went up to the front desk. I figured, well, this is a start, but then like, where's the locker room? I don't have shoes. How do I get shoes? Do you have shoes here? Do I need other things? Where do I go? How do I know what thing to go start on? Like, what do I go climbing on? Like, I had so many questions about how it all worked, let alone like, I'm looking around, and the demographic is probably like 10 to 15 years younger than I am. And they're all so fit and they're doing these crazy things. And I was like, I don't feel like I belong here. Right. And so I was just like tagging along with my friend, trying to feel like I'm part of something. And then there was this woman who worked there, and she noticed, I think that my friend and I were new anyway. And she came over and she sat down and she started talking to us about the way that things go in the gym and showing us things. And like, I told her I'd never done it before, and she probably was like, yeah, I know. Just by looking at you, I could tell. But she showed me a couple of tricks, or like how to get started, some different techniques and things. And she just instantly kind of made me feel better about the situation, just because she could see that I was like overwhelmed by the experience of being there, and that it was so new, that just showing me like, here's the logistics about how this gym works. Here are some of the rules, like don't sit on the mats, sit off to the side of them for safety reasons. Like, just telling me these little things made me feel so much more secure about being there, even though it seemed like the kind of person who goes there is younger and more fit than I am. I still felt like I could be there, So sometimes just like noticing that someone is their first time doing something, or that they're new, or they're feeling uncomfortable, and just like taking the time, I think, to give them sort of the ground rules of a situation can go a long way.
True. Very true. Yeah.
Well, you have taught in many places that I don't think I've ever even been. Where have you been a teacher? Where have you taught?
I started in India. I
Yeah.
was part of the Teach for India movement. It's similar to the Teach for America. It's a sister concern, I would say. And I was teaching in an underprivileged school for 2 years in New Delhi. That's the capital of India. And the community where I was teaching, it was a refugee major community. So we had refugees in India, we had refugees from different parts of the world, and they mainly lived in the community where I taught.
I see.
So I had 49 beautiful girls in
49 in your class?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Classroom size is very high. The population of India is very high, so everything we have is big in terms of numbers. Like number of people everywhere is huge. So I would say I was fortunate to get 49. I know teachers who teach like 60, even 80.
In one class?
Yes.
Remarkable.
Yeah.
Incredible.
So I have like respect.
For kidding.
Yeah.
Kidding.
You
taught in India. You say you taught at least one other place?
Yeah, I volunteered to teach in a couple of schools in Finland. And that was a great experience. I had earned a scholarship to visit Finland, study the education system there. So as I was doing that, I also volunteered in a couple of schools, conducted workshops, Bollywood dancing workshops there, and had fun with students, although we didn't know the language.
Dance is universal, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I taught there, and for my one of the consulting assignments that I did for my graduate school at Harvard, I also visited Kenya and visited a number of schools there where I interacted with students a lot. So that was another different experience for me. I also, although I did not teach, but had a lot of interactions with students in Peru when I visited Peru. So that was another thing. And now I don't get to teach in the United States directly, but I love going to school. It's my happy place.
Yeah, and seeing what all the kids are doing.
Yes. Yes.
So as a teacher, you've had to create spaces for the students that you're teaching, especially when you're talking about a room full of almost 50 girls and from different countries, not from one space, but from lots of places.
Right.
And then even traveling over to Finland and trying to do the same over there. I'm curious what you've done to create welcoming spaces in your classrooms, and how is it different in different countries, or do you try and do things sort of in a similar way?
I would say experience in India has helped me a lot, because we have although there are different states, we have different languages in every state, different food in every state. So my classroom, as you correctly put, was a kind of a melting pot of different cultures, different languages, different foods. So I learned there to create a welcoming environment which would go beyond the cultural and cultural linguistic barriers of teachers, of students. So I fumbled at the beginning, definitely, but I learned from the experience that from India to do that. And I learned that, as you said, there are things which go beyond cultural and linguistic identities. So some things which really help me are music, dance. Everybody loves music. Everybody kind of seems to enjoy dancing. And research says that music and dance help us relax, build a relationship, release happy hormones. and those go beyond any barriers. So embedding pieces of music and dance in the classroom really helped me. And that's what I tried to do in Finland also. Although I did not know the language, students were not very comfortable with English as well. They hardly knew a few words of English. Even though I could speak, I was fully proficient in English. It was difficult to have a full conversation in one sentence. Dancing really helped in putting people together, building relationships. I would also say where there are linguistic barriers, the language of teacher and students is different. Learning just a few words of the students' language really helped me. I have seen smiles spread across Kenya's classroom where I just used a few words of Swahili in greeting them or saying thank you to them. They would just be like, there would be smiles and they would feel comfortable and we would start having a good conversation or build relation. That was the starting point of building relationships.
Yeah.
And I also figured that nobody's too old for a show and tell. So, so we would have these little days in the classroom where we all bring something from the home to show and talk about it. What's close to me, what's something that's close to me, someone who's close to me, and we would show it to everyone and try to talk about it. And that's how we slowly start building relationships with each other.
I love that. I love that. And I'm thinking too about the way that distance learning has gone for people over the last year and some change, that I think that some of us have felt like we've built closer relationships with people because we're in each other's homes, technically, you know, like my kids will come and just like run into a meeting sometimes, or a dog like walks across someone's background, or a cat comes across your face or something. And so you just start to know people as people because we're in our homes. And so I like the idea of doing a show and tell, no matter how old you are. I can't remember the last time someone asked me to bring something from home to like share that meant something to me, you know, but well, maybe, I guess we've brought in food sometimes to the office. We'll bring in something that that we've made at home, something that we like to make at home. We bring it into the office to share. So that could be another thing, right? Yeah.
Food is another part where I feel it's the conversation starter, and being Indian, it's my conversation starter. Anywhere I go across the globe, talking about Indian food, everybody loves it, and
everybody loves Indian food. That's a love. It's delicious. Curries and rice and like all of that stuff is so good.
Yeah, and it's always a conversation starter for me anywhere I go. And I also figured that as teachers, we always have like kind of granola bars or candies for our students.
Yeah.
So going a little step ahead of that and maybe having, let's say, we had like Afghan refugee students in my classroom. So why not have a Afghanistan day where we bring in some Afghan food, we sing Afghan songs, dance to it, and then the students who were the Afghani refugees would talk about their attire, their like traditional attire, their flag, and we learn from each other and we share the pieces of culture that we bring together. A friend also told me, a friend who lives in New Jersey, Indian friend, she told me that on Diwali, like her kids' teacher invited her to the classroom, bringing some Indian food and talking about how we celebrate Diwali, what we eat and what's the food that's special to Diwali. So sharing the pieces of culture come with food is always a binding piece.
It's true. It's true. When I was thinking earlier about, you know, our talk today, our conversation today, I was thinking about like the things that make me feel the most welcome. And I think it's always food.
Yes.
Just having food around just instantly makes me feel like, oh, I can be here. It's okay. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So you and I know each other from the grant work that you're doing with our friend and colleague, Rhonda Denise. And
Amazing women.
oh, it's just incredible. She was on our podcast not too long ago, actually, talking about some of the restorative work that you all are engaged with. So, can you tell us just like a little summary about the project that you're working on, and then we'll talk a little bit about one specific component of it. So, tell everybody about ISLA.
So ISLA is Inclusive Skill Building Learning Approach, where we support student engagement and decrease disruption in the classroom, and that's done by a restorative piece. So we start on school-wide approach. It's built on like building relationships, preventative strategies, and then later on moving on to the restorative piece where like talking to the student, understanding what's important to them, building that one skill that will help the student decrease disruption in the classroom and increase the engagement. So that's a little bit about ISLA. And
yeah. And there's a model that that you all follow, and one of those components is classroom management practices. Yeah, and there's some strategies that you all call WOW strategies. Yes. So did you come up with that acronym, or is this something that's like known in the educational space?
I don't think it's known. I think we came up with it, like it's an acronym.
Let's just say you came up with it. That's great.
Wow, we came up with it.
Yeah. Okay. So it's an acronym.
Yeah.
And what does it stand for?
So it stands for welcoming the students at the door, owning your environment, and wrapping up with intention.
Yeah. So so let's talk a little bit about how those pieces kind of work together to create a space where students can be successful.
Yes. As I said, in ISLA, we start building upon the school-wide preventative approach of, building relationship and setting up routines. So WOW strategies define that for us. It means, as I said, it's an acronym for welcoming students at the door, owning your environment, and wrapping up with intention. Let me talk about every element a little bit in detail. And I'm trying to focus on the elements from an implementator's point of view, as in, if I am the educator, if I'm the teacher in a classroom, how would I implement the WOW strategies in my classroom? These strategies are based on the premise and the research that it will help decrease the disruption in the classroom and also increase the engagement. So welcoming students at the door, it's basically one of my favorite ones, mainly because it doesn't need any cost. It's totally free. It doesn't need any preparation. And you can do it like at every class or every day. So say you are you're starting your day, it's your classroom and students are starting to enter. So how you welcome them at the door? So basically you stand at the door, say each student's name, make eye contact, use a non-verbal friendly greeting, and think about if you want to embed like COVID-free greetings now, COVID-safe greetings, I would say.
The elbow taps, the little hip check.
Yes. Or maybe a simple say. So you stand at the door, make eye contact, use a like non-verbal COVID-safe greeting. Ask each student as they enter, how's their day going, and like it helps setting a positive tone. It helps like when you make eye contact, the student really feel a connection and feel welcomed in the classroom. And as you do it at the door, inside you already like maybe you have set up a sitting arrangement, thinking about today's class. If you need like small groups, so arranging the chair in small groups. If you need to have a big circle. So maybe having big circle, setting up name tags, making it clear to students as like where they are sitting today. Having the printed or whatever material ready, like at each place, making it clear to students today what we are doing.
Yeah.
And having a set of slides rotating in the classroom, telling today's agenda. There are different options which you can explore. Telling today's agenda, maybe sharing a meme,
Yeah.
a joke, or setting up a little do now task till everybody arrives and settle down. And if you like, you can also play some soft music.
Yeah, that's a good time to incorporate song and
And for welcoming the students, all these things that I told at the end, they are added, like sitting arrangement, playing music, sharing. The basic thing is standing at the door, using each student's name, making eye contact. That is the basis of welcoming students at the door.
Yeah.
So that's my favorite.
Yeah. I've seen a bunch of online, some of these videos of teachers who have these elaborate welcomes with their students. They go viral. It's pretty incredible the way that they remember the unique way to welcome each specific student. They have like a handshake or something that they do specific to each kiddo. It's kind of incredible.
That reminds me.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just saying that reminds me of one of the videos that I have watched, like a high school Spanish teacher, and every time he would enter the classroom, like he would greet everyone with a different like style. Sometimes he would just jump, or sometimes he would
I think I've seen it. He comes in and he says, "Buenos dias," every day, but he says it in like a different way or a different tone, and his students started recording him coming into class every time. So, and that's something that you can explore as you go, thinking about what's your style. So so I may not be a hugger, and I might not prefer standing at the door and hug every student as they walk, but I like giving high fives. So, so thinking about what's your style, what you prefer, and slowly trying to understand what's your student's style, what they like, what do they prefer, and trying to merge both the styles slowly as you go into the academic year. As you get to know each other.
That really helps.
So what's owning your environment?
Owning your environment is basically focusing on building routines in your classroom. So it has three elements: teaching the routine, modeling the routines, and acknowledging expected student behavior. So as a teacher or as an educator, I would always think, what are the different times of the day, or what are the different activities that I would want my students to do in an entire day or in an entire classroom period? And is there some expected behavior that I want my students to repeat? So building those routines, starting from the academic, as we enter the academic year, teaching those routines very explicitly to the students, telling them what is expected in different situations. So if I ask a question, how do you answer? Do you raise your hands? Or if you need to get a drink of water, what is expected? What do you do? Thinking about all kinds of scenarios, building routines around them, teaching those routines very explicitly to the students, modeling those routines initially a lot to tell them what's expected, and acknowledging the expected behaviors. If you see some students following what you taught, like what routines you taught, acknowledging very clearly, that really helps.
I'm thinking it reminds me of that story I was telling about going to that rock climbing gym where I didn't know anything about what was going on in there. And I was too like out of my element to even think to ask about the things that I didn't know what to do, and to have someone come and say, no, your shoes go up here. This is where you can like put all your things and lock them up. And then here's the restroom. And then now we come down here, like just like walking me through it, even that first time. And then telling me like, if you can't remember, just come ask me about it was also really helpful, So I could imagine that for students, especially at the beginning of the year, it would be useful to tell them all of these things, even the small things, like you were saying, if you have a question, raise your hand, because it could be that they just, either they're kindergartners, right? And they don't know what to do, or they came from a classroom and they did it a certain way. And now in your classroom, you're doing it this way, whatever it is, like it's a little thing, but it goes a long way, I think, to making people feel comfortable and less nervous about doing the wrong thing.
Right. And one thing I want to stress here is being very consistent in the way you teach routines, you model routines, and even acknowledging the expected student behavior, being very consistent. I would say like kind of making it your own daily routine to do these things very consistently throughout the year will definitely go a long way. Maybe end of the year, you won't have to model that much, or you won't even like, it will just become a second nature for you and your students. But initially investing some time and like doing it consistently would really go a long way in setting up a welcoming environment for your students and you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And then the last acronym, the last letter in the acronym.
The last letter, it stands for wrapping up with intention. The W stands for wrapping up with intention. And research has shown that a specified end of the class or end of the day routine for students helps make them calm down, gather their learning, and prepare them for their next class or next activity. Especially, I would think it helps if you have a class just before the lunch break.
Sure.
Yeah, and as students walk into the hallway, you would always think, and I have experienced that having a specified end of the class routine really helps students like behave or like especially calm down during the lunch hours. And there are different ways as to how you can wrap up with the intention. So maybe having a closing circle at the end where you have like specific questions and every student shares about them, or having a simple like exit tickets where like students write down, you have a specific question for students and students write down and give it to you as they leave the class. Or having like a big chart and sticky notes where they stick their thoughts or their reflections, or just I remember seeing like exit ticket format, like a teacher had like huge chart and she just gave sticky notes to students, and the question simply was, how are you feeling today? So that really helps the teacher in understanding how are my students today, what are they going through, and really help building the connection as well. At the same time, help her understand. And personally, I have experienced that as a new teacher in the classroom, sometimes I would think that I did not do well in the class as a teacher. I don't know whether my learning objectives were met. As a teacher, I would think that, but as I go through the exit tickets of my students, I would be comfortable thinking that, oh no, like, learning, they got it.
It's magic. Yeah, I just saw a video, I think online, of a teacher. It was like a little, like, I don't know, something on TikTok probably, where a teacher was like, I'm up there, and it said, the caption said like teaching some really complicated concept with lots of details, and then you turn and you look and he calls on a student, and the student says not only the right answer, but like confidently and like whatever, and he's just like, I did it. Like just so over the moon that like it worked, you know. And it's true, like you don't always get that feedback right away.
Right.
So at the end of the day, it would be kind of nice to just sort of do a quick check-in, like, did you get it? I don't know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And again, thinking about what's your style. So like, I would prefer having students sit in a circle and share and talk about it. But if you want like students to just calm down, sit down, reflect and write down, thinking about what's your style, thinking about what's your student's style, what do they prefer, and building a kind of wrapping up routine for them really helps.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point you're making, because a big part about making other people feel welcome, I think, really hinges on the fact that you feel comfortable and that you're doing something that means something to you, and that you want it to be meaningful for them too. So yeah, I think all of this around just being who you are and authentically doing these strategies in a way that comes, feels more natural to you, at least in the beginning, is going to go a long way toward bringing other people in and making them feel comfortable too. Yeah. Well, Saki, thank you so much for sharing your experiences, for sharing these strategies with us. I really appreciate it. I think that it's a concept, radically welcoming students and each other is a concept that I'm going to take with me for a long time. And I appreciate adding your voice to the conversation.